Imagine if missing lunch meant you were literally medically dead by dinner time. Not hangry, not a little lethargic, dead. Now imagine your phone is permanently stuck at 1% battery. The screen is dimming, and the only way to keep it from dying is to plug it in every 15 to 30 minutes, 24 hours a day, for your entire life. Enter the shrew. Now, I know exactly what you were picturing in your head right now. You were picturing a cute, pointy-nosed little field mouse scurrying around a garden. Do me a favor and throw that image directly in the trash. Shrews are not rodents. Taxonomically, they belong to a bizarre group of mammals that makes them more closely related to a blue whale, a horse, or a bat than they are to a mouse. They just happen to look like mice because nature is lazy and loves to copy-paste a solid design. The Etruscan shrew is the smallest mammal on Earth by weight. It weighs about 1.8 grams. That is less than a single copper penny. And being this unbelievably small is a biological death sentence because of an annoying little rule in physics called Kleiber's Law. Translation: the smaller an animal gets, the more body heat it loses to the air, and the faster it has to burn energy per gram just to stay warm. A large animal, like an elephant, is a highly efficient, slow-burning tank. A shrew is a leaky paper cup full of rocket fuel. Gram for gram, its metabolic rate is up to 100 times higher than an elephant's. Because of this leaky bucket physics, a shrew's engine has to run at a speed that honestly sounds like a glitch in the simulation. Its heart beats up to 1,500 times a minute. That is 25 heartbeats every single second. If you held a shrew up to your ear, you would not hear a thump-thump heartbeat. You would hear a continuous, buzzing vibration, exactly like a PlayStation controller when you take damage in a game. Even when it is just standing still, it is making up to 12 tiny body movements every second. If you, a human being, had the metabolism of an Etruscan shrew, you would need to eat roughly 20,000 to 25,000 calories every single day. That is about 40 Big Macs a day, every day, forever, just to not evaporate. So, the shrew eats. It eats its entire body weight, and sometimes up to twice its body weight, every single day. It doesn't get to sleep through the night. It takes tiny little micronaps, essentially doing brief system reboots, and then wakes up screaming for bugs. If a small shrew goes without food for just 2 to 5 hours, it literally starves to death. In the United Kingdom, you actually need a special government license just to catch a shrew in a trap. Why? Because if you don't go back to check the trap frequently enough, the shrew will burn through its fuel reserves and starve to death while waiting for you. This animal isn't a mammal. It is a biological panic attack. But wait, it gets worse. What happens when winter comes? You can't just casually eat your body weight in insects when it is freezing outside and all the bugs are dead or hiding. A normal, respectable animal would just get fat and hibernate. But shrews cannot store enough fat to hibernate. They are physically incapable of doing it. A common shrew can burn through over 50% of its total body fat in just 2.5 hours in the cold. So what does a shrew do when the battery is flashing red, the temperature drops, and there are no chargers in sight? It does something so completely unhinged that when a Polish forester first measured it in the 1940s, scientists literally did not believe him. It is called Denel's phenomenon. When winter hits, the common shrew physically shrinks its own skeleton. I am not exaggerating. The skull itself shrinks by up to 20%. Its spine gets physically shorter. Its liver, spleen, kidneys, and heart literally shrink. Most shockingly, its brain mass drops by 20 to 30%. The shrew basically deletes parts of its own body to lower the power bill. It is the biological equivalent of putting your phone in extreme low power mode by deleting all your apps, all your photos, and most of your operating system. And here is the absolute wildest part. Brain tissue takes a massive amount of calories to run. By shrinking its brain, the shrew saves precious energy. But a massive study in 2018 found that when the shrew shrinks its brain, it actually gets measurably worse at solving mazes and spatial learning tasks. The animal voluntarily trades its IQ points for calories. It decides, I do not need to be smart right now, I just need to not die. It objectively becomes dumber to survive the frost. And then, when spring rolls around and the food comes back, the skull expands, the brain regrows, and it gets its memories back. But shrinking your own brain isn't the only desperate hack these guys use to survive. Because when you live your entire life on 1% battery, you do not have the luxury of being a nice guy. You have to be a monster. Enter the northern short-tailed shrew. It is one of the only venomous mammals on the entire planet. But it does not use its venom to kill its prey. Killing prey is for amateurs, because dead bugs rot. Instead, the shrew uses its toxic saliva to paralyze earthworms, frogs, and mice, and then drags them back to its den to create a living pantry. It stores immobilized, totally conscious animals so that its snacks stay perfectly fresh for days. It is a tiny, fuzzy serial killer meal prepping its victims in an underground basement. Or how about the American water shrew? It hunts underwater, but because it burns energy so incredibly fast, it does not have time to slowly swim around sniffing for snacks. It strikes its prey in about 20 milliseconds. And to find that prey, it will literally exhale air bubbles onto objects underwater, and then immediately re-inhale those exact same bubbles so it can smell things while completely submerged. It invented underwater sniffing because it was simply too impatient to hold its breath. Some water shrews can even run right across the surface of the water for short distances, furiously paddling and using surface tension to keep from sinking, acting like a tiny, extremely stressed out Jesus lizard. And you would think a life this frantic, this highly caffeinated would make them terrible parents. But no, they have a hack for that too. When mother shrews need to move their blind, helpless babies from one nest to another, they do something called caravanning. One baby grabs the base of the mother's tail with its mouth, the next baby bites the tail of that baby, and so on, forming a tiny, chaotic conga line of screaming babies. If the mom runs, the whole furry train runs. You can literally pick up the mother, and the entire string of babies will just dangle in the air, locked together. It looks adorable, but it exists for a deeply dark reason. If a baby gets lost, it will starve to death in hours. There is absolutely no time to form a search party. If you think that is the craziest thing in their family tree, let me briefly introduce you to the hero shrew from the Congo Basin. While most shrews are fragile little hummingbirds, the hero shrew has a spine that looks like it was designed by a military engineer. The bones in its back are heavily reinforced and interlocked like armor plating. Back in the early 1900s, local people demonstrated to European explorers that a full-grown human man could stand entirely on the back of a living hero shrew for several minutes, step off, and the shrew would just shake it off and walk away unharmed. A creature in the exact same family as the fragile animal that starves to death in an afternoon is also out here bearing the weight of a grown adult. We, as a species, have completely misunderstood these animals for thousands of years. In medieval England, people thought shrews were evil spirits, and they would try to cure their sick cows by literally sealing a live shrew inside a hole drilled into an ash tree. In ancient Egypt, they were worshipped as the blind, nocturnal form of the sun god and mummified in little bronze coffins. Across Asia, they are called money rats because their squeaks sound like counting coins. We named nagging people after them, and we miss the point every single time. In a hilarious twist of fate, the venom that those medieval English villagers were so scared of, modern scientists isolated a chemical from the short-tailed shrew's paralytic spit and turned it into an experimental cancer drug that actually went into human trials. And because rats and mice physically cannot throw up, medical researchers use the Asian house shrew as the gold standard for testing anti-nausea drugs for chemotherapy. They put these little guys on shaking platforms just to make them motion sick. An entire branch of human pharmacology exists because shrews are exceptionally good at puking. But here is the ultimate tragedy of the shrew. Even if it manages to eat twice its weight every single day, even if it successfully paralyzes a fridge full of bugs, even if it shrinks its brain down to survive the winter frost, it still cannot win. You see, humans get two sets of teeth in our lifetime, baby teeth and adult teeth. Shrews actually shed their baby teeth before they are even born. They pop out into the world with one single set of permanent adult teeth. To help them last, some species, called red-toothed shrews, literally deposit iron into the enamel of their teeth to make them incredibly hard and wear-resistant. They have iron-tipped battle teeth, but because they have to eat non-stop, 24 hours a day, crunching through hard beetle shells, dirt, and bones, those iron-tipped teeth eventually wear completely flat, and they never, ever grow back. The shrew does not usually die of old age. It rarely dies of a disease. A shrew usually lives for about 12 to 18 months, and then it simply runs out of cutlery. When its teeth wear down, it cannot chew. When it cannot chew, it cannot eat. And when it cannot eat, that 1% battery finally inevitably hits zero, and the phone shuts off forever. The most fiercely overclocked, heavily armored, brain-shrinking, venomous survivor on the planet is ultimately taken out because it didn't have access to a dentist. The shrew isn't angry. The shrew isn't evil. The shrew is just fighting a brutal, unwinnable war against the fundamental laws of thermodynamics every single second of its life, and it absolutely refuses to go down quietly.